I've been following this whole thing from the inside for the better part of a year now. Turtle WoW getting sued, then shutting down, the community scattering, and now Blizzard turning around and suing Project Ascension too. And I kept seeing people argue about how these two cases compare, whether Ascension's in deeper trouble, whether it's going to go the same way Turtle did. So instead of guessing, I went and pulled both complaints, the actual court filings, and read through them properly, side by side. And what's in there tells you a lot about how Blizzard is thinking right now, so that's what this video is. We've got one lawsuit that's completely finished, which is Turtle, and one that just started, which is Ascension. And reading them next to each other is honestly the clearest window we've had into how Blizzard goes after the private server scene. If I get anything wrong here, and this is dense legal stuff, so it's entirely possible, drop it in the comments. I'd genuinely rather be corrected than leave something inaccurate sitting there. Let me start with what surprised me most, which is just how similar these two documents actually are. When you read them back to back, it's honestly a little uncanny how close they are. Nearly the same document, they're even almost the same length. The Turtle complaint runs 49 pages and the Ascension 151, but the page count is the least of it. It's the same law firm behind both of them, with the same lead attorney signing off, filed in the same court out in the Central District of California, which handles a lot of Blizzard's legal business anyway. And big stretches of the two complaints are just word for word identical. The whole section explaining what World of Warcraft even is, the part about the subscription model, the bit about that user agreement you click through without reading, the technical explanation of how the game client talks to the server, and how that connection's encrypted, basically copy-pasted from the one lawsuit straight into the next. There's even a specific phrase that turns up in both of them. Blizzard accuses each project of having built, quote, an entire business on large-scale, egregious, and ongoing infringement. The exact same wording both times, and to me that tells you this is a template more than anything else. Blizzard built a legal machine going after Turtle, and now they're just feeding Ascension through the same one. It runs deeper than a few shared paragraphs though. Both lawsuits come at it with the same 9 legal claims, lined up in pretty much the same order. You've got copyright infringement, then inducing other people to infringe, then contributory and vicarious infringement, which are really just different flavors of being on the hook for someone else's copying. Then there's a Digital Millennium Copyright Act claim about stripping out the protections that stop the game connecting to unofficial servers, then interfering with Blizzard's contracts, then false designation of origin, which is the trademark piece about using the Warcraft and Blizzard logos, and then the two heavy ones they save for the end. In both cases, RICO, the racketeering claims, the law that was originally written to go after organized crime, pointed here at a group of people running a WoW server. There's one small difference in how the fifth claim gets worded. In the Turtle case, it's specifically about trafficking in the circumvention tools, and in the Ascension one it's framed a bit more broadly as a general violation of that same act. But that's a lawyer's distinction really, not something most of us would ever notice. Underneath it, the structure is the same. 9 claims that start and finish the same way. So if the documents line up this closely, what actually changed? Because some things did, and the differences are where it gets genuinely interesting. The first thing that's different is the scale, at least in the way Blizzard describes it. The Turtle complaint talks in terms of thousands of people downloading the client, tens of thousands playing, and somewhere between hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars in what the project like to call donations. Already a big operation by any measure. The Ascension complaint, and I really do need to stress that everything in here is Blizzard's allegation and none of it's been proven, describes something bigger. More than 1 million players, millions of dollars moving through the whole thing, a much larger and more commercial machine than Turtle ever was. Whether that actually holds up is for a court to sort out, but you can see Blizzard clearly framing Ascension as the bigger fish. The second difference only shows up in the Ascension lawsuit, and it's a striking one. Blizzard alleges that Ascension servers are running on what get called bulletproof servers. tied to a Russia-based operation that the complaint says got sanctioned by the US Treasury back in 2025 for helping cybercriminals. There's nothing like that in the Turtle filing at all. It's a newer and harder accusation, and Blizzard leans on it to argue the defendants knew full well what they were doing and deliberately set up somewhere they figured was out of reach, which again is the allegation. The other side hasn't had a chance to answer it yet. But honestly, the most important difference between these two cases isn't written in either complaint. It comes down to who these people are and where they actually live, and that might decide the whole thing. So here's how it looked with Turtle. The person Blizzard named as the one running it, who went by Shenna in the scene, was alleged to be over in Moscow, and the developers were scattered all over the place: Germany, Bulgaria, the Netherlands, Romania, the Czech Republic, Russia. Almost the whole team sat outside the United States, with only one person, the marketing lead, actually based in America over in Michigan. And that matters more than you'd think, because a US court can hand down the most crushing judgment you can imagine, but actually enforcing it against people spread out across Russia and half of Europe is a totally different problem. The reach just isn't really there. Now here's how it looks with Ascension, going by what the complaint lays out. The people Blizzard alleges are the main operators, including the one the scene knows as Dutch, are supposedly based right here in the United States, over in Tennessee and Ohio, on American soil, well within reach of the exact court that's hearing the case. And you've got to sit with that difference for a second, because it's pretty much the whole ball game. With Turtle, even though Blizzard won outright, the enforcement was always going to run into that wall of geography. With Ascension, if Blizzard's right about where these people actually live, there's nothing like the same escape hatch. A US judgment landing on people who actually live in the US is a very real thing in a way it just wasn't last time. And that, more than anything, is why this one could play out really differently. So what does the finished case tell us about the one that's just getting going? Turtle wrapped up in what's called a stipulated judgment, which basically means the defendants who settled agreed to let Blizzard win rather than drag it through a fight. Blizzard got its judgment on the claims that were entered, and then came the part that should make anybody in the scene pay attention: the permanent injunction. And it was about as broad as these things ever get. It didn't just switch the servers off, it went after everything around them, so no successor server, no handing the code off to anyone else, no Unreal Engine remake of the sort they'd been planning with that Turtle WoW 2.0 project, and no soliciting donations either. It even handed Blizzard a path to take the domain name itself. One writer made the point that the injunction reads like it was written by somebody who remembered exactly how Nostalrius came back from the dead under a new name, and was dead set on not letting that happen twice. The settlement itself was kept confidential, the case was set to be fully dismissed in early June, and the servers had already gone dark back in the middle of May. 8 years of fan work gone in about 8 months of litigation. Now lay that over Ascension. If this really is the same playbook running again, the same firm and the same court and the same 9 claims, then the way Turtle ended is basically a preview of where this is heading. The one big difference is that the thing that limited the Turtle judgment, the fact that everyone was overseas, may just not be there this time. A case built on that exact same blueprint, only aimed at people allegedly sitting within arm's reach of the court. That's a whole different kind of danger for the project and for anything attached to it. I want to be careful wrapping this up because the two cases really do sit in completely different places. Turtle is over. I can talk about what happened there as plain fact because a court ruled and the server went dark. Ascension has barely started. Every single thing Blizzard says about it is, right now, an allegation, untested and unanswered and unproven. The people named in it deserve their day in court, and a complaint is only ever one side doing the talking. But the comparison still tells you something real. Blizzard has clearly landed on a formula it likes, and it's running that formula again, faster this time and against a bigger target. The scene spent years assuming these servers were basically untouchable, too scattered, and too far away for Blizzard to ever really bother. Turtle put an end to that idea. An Ascension with operators who are allegedly sitting inside the United States might end up being the case that shows just how far Blizzard's reach really goes once the geography stops doing the protecting. I honestly don't know how it ends. These things can drag on for a long time, and the live one could twist off in directions none of us see coming. But if you want a sense of where it might be headed, the finished case is sitting right there to read. The blueprint's already been used once. So what's your read on it? Does the whole US-based angle change how you think this plays out next to Turtle? And if you understand this kind of law better than I do, and I know a bunch of you do, I'd really love to hear it. That's the best part of doing these. Thank you so much for watching. Until the next one, take care.